Hey guys, welcome back to Jay's Fifth Down Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Gay, back here with your more football news, everything you need to know. Before we get started, please make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment, check us out here on YouTube, also on Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcast. We're on there. Check us out daily for your NFL news, college football, and high school football news as well. News for today, pretty much wanted to go over. The NFL is appealing the Deshaun Watson decision. This just came in not too long ago from Adam Schefter, ESPN insider for the NFL, just reported this not too long ago. The NFL is appealing the Deshaun Watson decision that he is supposed to be suspended for 6 games for the allegations. So now the NFLPA, the Players Association, has 2 business days to respond to the appeal. So they have filed an appeal, but this doesn't mean anything shouldn't, don't expect anything to happen right away as far as will he get a reduced suspension or his suspension increase or he gets none at all, so just we don't know what's going to happen with that situation. So just keeping a close eye on that. Stay tuned in for updates. I'll be providing you guys with the latest updates as I get them, for everything you need to know about the whole Deshaun Watson situation. So the NFL season does begin officially in September. However, football really is back tomorrow night as the Jaguars and the Las Vegas Raiders play in the Hall of Fame game, the annual classic all-time Hall of Fame game, which will be played tomorrow, August 4th, 2022 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC. You guys can catch that on NBC at Tom Benson Stadium. Of course, annual Hall of Fame game, like I mentioned, don't expect any of the starters to play, but we will see some football again for the first time since the Super Bowl. So that'll be good to watch some football. And everybody's been missing some football. High school football starting back this week as well. It's been the first week of pads for everybody. So, we're getting to that time of the year, getting close to fall. We're getting close to that time where it's time for football on Sundays and Saturdays, college football and the NFL. So I'm excited. I know y'all are excited. So let's get down to the nitty-grittiness of the podcast here. And we are officially – football is back, y'all. I'm so excited. I'm ready to go. This is going to be a great season. I believe on both levels of college football and the NFL because, things are constantly changing, all the time. Players been going to different teams and this and that, and really college football is, like I said on my other podcast, is really becoming close to the NFL, as far as the player movement, because now with the transfer portal, you got all these guys moving schools and this and that. So, it's really interesting to see how all this all plays out. I believe that the playing field is getting even somewhat in a sense, in retrospect, not completely because you still have your top dogs in college with Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, I guess you can throw up there. But really after that, there's some toss-ups, you never know who could take over, but we'll get into that later in the podcast. But officially today, like I said, the Deshaun Watson decision has been appealed by the NFL. And so, like I said, the Players Association, they have 2 business days to respond to the appeal. They have to go through a whole process with that and see what the whole deal will be with Deshaun Watson. Of course, he was suspended originally, decided by Sue Robinson, the arbitrator, for 6 games for 2022, which everybody has their own opinions on about, whether that is a suffice punishment enough or not for Watson and for what he did. Like I told you guys my opinion earlier, and y'all can again, fill the comment section up, y'all. Let me know what you think. But again, I feel like something of that magnitude, he should have got some more. He should have been suspended for more games. At least you can do 10, or 12, if not 17, because you look at Josh Gordon and those guys in the past who did the substances, they were suspended for PED and all that, for weed and all that stuff. They were suspended for the whole 16-game season, when it was 16 games at that point in time, but they were suspended for the whole season. And you got Deshaun Watson, who was accused of over 24 sexual assault allegations, massage parlor. He's only getting a 6-game suspension so far for the decision that's been made. But again, that can be changed as the appeal has been filed by the NFL Players Association. So that's just something to monitor and keep an eye on as we move throughout training camp and into the NFL season. In the preseason, a couple weeks. But that's something I just want to tell you guys about that, so you know that we are making progress on this situation, and it's something again to monitor, keep an eye on as we move closer to the start of the 2022 NFL season, guys. It's almost here. But Cardinals wide receiver Marquise Brown, guys, Hollywood Brown, Antonio Brown's cousin, who's of course, drafted by the Baltimore Ravens in 2019. He had a couple good seasons, but kind of dropped off the last 2 years. And production wise, he was traded, of course, on draft night to the Arizona Cardinals. However, he was arrested this morning and charged with criminal speeding at 7:05 a.m. He was arrested at the Arizona at the jail in North Phoenix, Arizona. So there's that. And here's my opinion, and I'm not in the NFL. I've never been in the NFL. I know people that are in the NFL, but my whole opinion is this, and this goes on all levels of football and with all sports, I think. You've got to have guys who are locked in. You got to have guys who know the consequences of what they do, their actions. You got to have guys who are aware of those situations, and they have to be, aware that what they do can hurt the team as well as it can hurt themselves. And the Cardinals' wide receiving core was already questionable as is. You have the DeAndre Hopkins getting suspended for 6 games this year for PED use for this upcoming season. And then you lose Christian Kirk to the Jaguars in free agency. So really, your receiving core is already up in the air. You don't really have a true number one wideout with Hopkins out, and then you trade for Hollywood Brown, but he goes and does something like this. So it just does not a good look for the Cardinals. Not a good look for Marquise Brown. His cousin already does enough stuff, but Marquise Brown. Very talented receiver, great speed. He's got good hands. He's a very, very talented player. However, this is a big mistake, and depending on what happens, because if a guy gets arrested, you're losing time, and he probably get bailed out or whatever soon, but if you're losing time, those are meaningful practice reps that you're getting with your number one wide receiver. If you're Kyler Murray, if I'm Kyler Murray, I'm pissed right now because, my potential number one starting wide receivers got arrested, and now those are practice reps that we're losing here in training camp, getting more and more used to the speed, and getting used to his hands and how he runs his routes and those different things. Chemistry between the quarterback and the receiver is important in the game of football, because without it, your offense will struggle, because your number one wideout and your quarterback have to be on the same page in order for the offense to function properly like it is, especially in the type of system that the Arizona Cardinals run, which is basically an air raid system, and they love to pass the ball a lot. Cliff Kingsbury loves to pass the ball, and that's why they went and traded for DeAndre Hopkins, because they really have not had a true number one wideout in a couple of years. Really in a while, so they go and get him, and they brought AJ Green in last year, but that didn't do too well. So they're trying to build a solid receiving core in Arizona to help that offense out with Kyler Murray, and bringing in Marquise Brown was a great move on draft night by Arizona. Because the Ravens just felt like they had run out of patience with Marquise Brown. They feel like he didn't live up to par of what he could have been. He showed flashes in his previous couple of seasons with the Ravens, but he did not show what they wanted him to show them the past couple of years. So that's why they shipped him off to Arizona on draft night. But these are very meaningful reps that you're losing if you're a starting quarterback and you're missing your top receiver, and he's not practicing because he's in jail or arrested, whatever the case may be. Those are things that you don't want on your football team, because that messes with the chemistry and morale of the locker room. And again, this happens on all levels. Whether it's high school, college, or the NFL. You're a team. Your team is a brotherhood. You're bonded together, and you want to have everybody on the same page. And we have guys that mess up and do things like have problems like this, and it can really mess with the whole overall chemistry of the team. So that's just something that the Cardinals have to watch out for, and every other team in the NFL. I believe the Cardinals right now are in a very bumpy situation with the team, as far as they won their first 7 games last year, then they lost the rest of them, or close almost to lost the rest of them. They didn't finish the year well, and they made it to the playoffs, but they got embarrassed by the Rams in the first round. So Cliff Kingsbury's window, I believe, should be running out if it isn't already. As far as he's got to get this Cardinals team over the hump, and they have the talent to do it defensively, offensively. They just have to have everybody with the same mindset and the same goals and on the same page as far as wanting to win the Super Bowl. So that's just something to keep an eye on there. In other news, Jimmy Garoppolo is cleared to practice. He had, of course, the shoulder surgery this offseason. And the 49ers already mentioned that they are going with Trey Lance this year as their starter. So, Jimmy Garoppolo will be on his way out. However, that just hasn't happened yet. So he isn't practicing right now, and it's the 49ers are trying to sort that whole situation out with him. And, Trey Lance has been impressing in training camp so far from what I've been hearing. So it's just another situation to monitor, especially with all these different teams, because Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that some of these teams could use for the quarterback depth. A lot of teams don't have a consistent starter at the quarterback position, which is why trading for Garoppolo would not be a bad idea, but they're also keeping an eye on the situation here with San Francisco. Is he ready? Is he clear to play? Is he healthy enough to play? We don't know yet. So that's just something to watch out for as we move closer to the start of the NFL season. But the NFL has also stripped Miami Dolphins of their 2023 first-round pick, and they fined owner Stephen Ross $1.5 million for tampering with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. So if you guys are wondering what that means, basically the Dolphins were trying to get Tom Brady way back when he was in New England, and they were trying to illegally, they were having illegal talks with him and Sean Payton about joining the team. There's rules that in the NFL and the NBA about how you can go about things like that. You can't have conversations with players and coaches from other teams until you get permission from those teams themselves. And when you do so without permission, that is called tampering. And so the Dolphins have been punished for tampering. So now they have lost their 2023 first round pick, and their owner got fined $1.5 million for speaking early with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. Of course, there was rumors this offseason about Tom Brady possibly going to the Dolphins and this and that, and it didn't happen, obviously. But and Sean Payton ended up retiring from New Orleans, so the Dolphins got caught and they got in trouble. Now, the NFL did rule that the intentional tanking from Brian Flores wasn't the case. They ruled that wasn't, an intentional. They weren't trying to lose on purpose. So that whole case from last season, if you guys don't remember, has been denied. So there's nothing wrong with that there. However, they did get in trouble for tampering with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. So, it's something just something to keep an eye on there. I mean, now you lose your 2023 first round pick. There's rules that you have to follow in this league, and everybody's bound to them. There's no exceptions or anything like that. So, just very strange things happening over in Miami right now. But they got Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa, so interested to see how that dynamic duo works out this year for the Dolphins. If Tua can stay healthy, if that offensive line can hold up in pass protection, the Dolphins actually might be a good team. They aren't, their defense has always been solid the last couple of years. They've always had a solid defense, had, decent enough playmakers on both sides of the ball. The secondary has always been pretty good with Xavier Howard. He's a Pro Bowl cornerback. He's their star cornerback. So I wouldn't count the Dolphins out of a playoff appearance this year. I think they can make it possibly if they keep the offensive line together, if they keep everybody healthy. If they don't, then they won't do anything. And they'll just, they won't do anything. But I believe that they are a wild card team this year, possibly if everybody can stay healthy. If Tyreek Hill and Tua can get on the same page, then because in training camp, as far as I'm hearing, they've been having good chemistry together on the field and off, so that you always excited when you hear that if you're a team fan of because if your starting quarterback and your star receiver aren't on the same page, then that's a problem, right? So for Dolphins fans, I'm sure they're happy to hear that. But switching gears into college football, we're getting closer and closer to the college football season kicking off. So this again, top rankings came out the other day. Of course, your top 5 are Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, and all those teams. But really, this could be, again, a toss-up, like I mentioned earlier, because with your Alabamas and your Georgias and your Ohio States, could a team like Oklahoma roll in there? Could a team, maybe like, I don't know, Oregon possibly make a run, in the college football playoff? We don't know. It's kind of early to tell right now, but this is the transfer. This is where the transfer portal really has come into play and has really affected the game of college football. Not just not in the bad way, but in a good way, in a sense, because now it's leveled out the playing field. So you have a lot of teams are really having. A lot of teams have a lot of 5 stars. A lot of teams have a lot of good players on their teams versus, all of them when they used to go to Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Clemson and all these Power 5 schools and LSU at one point. But now you got Texas A&M as one of the top recruiting schools this year, and so they're getting all these good recruits and, Oregon as well. They're getting, and Texas. Texas is another name to watch out for. I don't believe they're going to make the playoffs, but they could. Steve Sarkisian is over there as the head coach, former Alabama offensive coordinator. So, he's bringing that Nick Saban type of mindset into the locker room. So I wouldn't count Texas out of anything right now. It's really too early to tell, but something to keep an eye on. Even Nick Saban said that last year was a rebuilding year for Alabama, even though they won the SEC championship and they went to the national championship, losing to Georgia in the end, however. But he said it was a rebuilding year. They lost a lot of their starters offensively and defensively to the NFL. He felt like last year wasn't the best Alabama team that could have been out on the field, and I do agree with him. They made it to the big game, but defense wasn't consistent the whole year for Alabama. Some games where they should have been blowing a lot of teams out, they end up letting them stick around in a couple games. So I do believe that this Alabama team will be much better than the one you saw in 2021. And, it'll be, when it gets down to December, it's going to be a great game between them and Georgia. So, so that's just something also to watch out for. But pretty much, guys, that wraps us up here for the podcast here on Jay's Fifth Down, the football podcast. Thank you guys for watching, listening. Make sure you tune in, subscribe, check us out here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, check us out. Let me know in your comments what you think. It's the NFL appealing to the Deshaun Watson decision. Is that a good idea? What's going to happen with Deshaun Watson? Let me know what you think. What's going to happen with him as we move closer to the NFL season? Just remember, the Hall of Fame game is tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern time on NBC. Jaguars and the Raiders. You guys can catch that tomorrow again on NBC at 8 o'clock Eastern time, 11 Pacific. Thank you guys for checking in on Jay's Fit Down, the football podcast. See you next time.